Hey, this is Rashad from Robotic Automata. We will be doing a little Selenium Restassured testing example. This one will not be using Cucumber, so if you're used to using Cucumber, this is much more lean and lightweight, and especially compared to our previous tutorials where we're using Serenity, we're using Restassured and Selenium directly, so this will be very lean, very little dependencies in our pom.xml. So it does take a little bit more setup, but you will have a lot less dependency management issues. So for this particular tutorial, we'll be doing Restassured. We are testing the Thinking Tester contact list app. So just an example of stuff you can do is, log in, log out, create a user. Here's a create a user page. Here's a contact list app where you can even add contacts and delete them, but we won't be messing with all that. We'll just do very simple add user, login user, log out user, and delete user. So we just take a little, for our add user, we just post to users endpoint with a first name, last name, email, password. We're looking for 201 status. And for login is very similar, but just email and password to the login endpoint. We're looking for 200 status, and we're hoping to get a token back that we can utilize. For logout, we need to provide that token in our bearer authorization. And for delete user, we also need a token to post with. So the repository structure, let's start with our test, and specifically our API test. So here's our user API test, and that will be relying on user factory to generate a user or environment, as well as the user API itself. And then to run the test, you have two separate commands depending on which test you want to run. So let's say we want to run the API test. So now I'm inside Selenium Restassured testing example. Let's go ahead and run those tests. Great, so everything passed. So let's take a look at some of our test results. So the test results you can find inside of Target Surefire reports, and I'm looking at the emailable reports because I think they're a little convenient to look at. Though perhaps the color coding is a little strong. We just ran 4 tests that passed: add user test, delete user, login user, and logout user. So let's take a look at the code now. So let's take a look at the API test. So tests, API tests, user API tests. So inside of user API test, we're going to set up a user, which is just a map of strings. And we're going to go ahead and set up our user before any of the tests run. And we're going to set up a get random user. Oops, I wanted to go inside of there. Great. So now we're inside of get random user, user factory get random user. And essentially what we do is create a map, we create a faker, and we create a fake value service. From our fake value service, we go ahead and create a random email, a random password. And then inside of our random user, we put in a first name, last name, email, password from the second 2 we generated from fake value service. The first 2 was from our faker. And then we go ahead and return that user. Then we go ahead and set up our base URI, which is just the Thinking Tester contact list URL. So our first test is add user test. We just want to add a user with the random user we just created. And essentially what that does is a REST assured request with content type of JSON, our request body, and we'll post a user's endpoint, which is here. And just to make the rest of the test simple, they're all very similar. So they have different endpoints. So login has the login endpoint, logout has this endpoint, and delete has this endpoint. And then so for login user, the main difference is our post is to a different endpoint, and the request body will just be an email and password. For the logout, instead of putting in a body, we will be going ahead and putting in a header, which has our token. And the same thing will happen for the delete, and our request will be different. It'll be a delete request. So then to do our login user, first of all, we can only do our login user if we did add a user. So this will only run after this test runs. We will go ahead and do a login user request. We will assert that the status code is 200. We will get our token, and we'll store that token. and then our log out user will only run after the login user. This time we'll get our token and we will log out with this token. And then we will assert that there's a status code of 200. Then for our delete user request, priority is 1 essentially establishes that this test will go after all of the subsequent tests. And we're going to go ahead and log in once again so that we can get a new token. And with this new token, we will go ahead and delete our user, and then we will check our status code is 200. So it's a very simple, clean test without Cucumber. It's very lean and tight in my opinion. And yeah, I hope you learned something, and take care.